From the beautiful Finger Lakes region of upstate New York, this is the Dental Lighthouse podcast. We take questions from anyone in the dental profession and discuss what it takes to win not only in dentistry, but in life. Business, leadership, relationships, parenting, health and wellness, money management, nothing is off limits on the Dental Lighthouse podcast. I'm Jason Tanoory, your host, and have over 20 years of experience to pull from. Learn from my mistakes and let me help you collapse time so you can become the best version of yourself. Yo, welcome back. Dental Lighthouse Podcast. Dr. Jason here. And our next guest is Mark from the great state of Utah. Mark, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you doing, Jason?
Better than I deserve. So, Mark, how can I help you today?
Well, I'd like to talk a little bit about some accountability concerns that I have and how to deal with it. I tend to avoid conflict, and I tend to maybe ignore it in certain ways, but I still want to hold my team accountable in some ways. In some of the ways, in one specific example, there's a couple that I'd like to maybe talk about, but cell phone use at the front desk, they know it's not supposed to happen, but it does. And I just need to know some ways that I can handle that in a constructive way. I love my team and I don't want to overreact, but I do want to help hold people accountable. So that's one thing that I was thinking that you could help me with. And also just time card. I want to say time card honesty. So when they're on the clock, they're working. When they're not on the clock, it's their personal time. But it seems to be a gray area there. Sometimes people like to stay on the clock to just chat, and it kind of hurts my overall overhead numbers. So those are two examples.
Awesome. Yeah, those are two really good examples. And to be 100% transparent with you, ones that'll be difficult to unpack, but they're problems that I've dealt with and currently deal with, and I know a lot of our listeners deal with them too. So before we get granular, I do want to just talk in theory about what you referenced in the sense of you want to keep people accountable, but it's a struggle for you. I always go back to, and you know I love you, so I feel like I can be honest with you. I always go back to who benefits the most when we don't keep someone accountable, right? So to use one of the examples that you gave, someone's misbehaving at the front desk, they're constantly on their cell phone or something like that. And if you as their leader are observing the behavior, yet you as their leader don't want to have a conversation with the person, then I would argue that the only person that's really benefiting in this scenario is you, because you don't have to develop the courage to have an uncomfortable conversation with that particular person. So I'm going to use a word here that kind of rubs people the wrong way, but when you don't have to develop the courage to do it, it's ultimately being selfish. And I know that you want what's in the best interest of the person that we're talking about and with your organization, but it's one thing to have the intent. It's quite another thing to actually act on it. So I would argue that we need to develop this. We can call it leadership muscle. We can call it courage muscle. We can call it whatever we want, but we need to develop this and get out of the behavior of being selfish and not doing it. Because when we don't do it, the person doesn't benefit, patients don't benefit, the organization certainly doesn't benefit. The only person that really benefits is the leader, because they don't have to get uncomfortable. So just keep that in the back of your mind as we navigate this conversation.
That's a good point.
So the first one, cell phone use. Cell phone use, man, with employees getting younger and younger, and people becoming more and more dependent on their cell phones. It's a hard nut to crack. And what I'm about to share with you is not the right way or not the wrong way. It's just what I believe and what I think works for us. So we allow team members to have cell phones on them. We allow team members to use their cell phones sporadically throughout the day. Um, we did have a period of time where I got um, very strict on cell phone use and made people keep it in their locker, keep it in their purse, or something like that. And what we found was, and it could be the addictive nature of cell phones, but what we found was people continually leaving their desk, their operatory, and checking their phone, right? Like usually like once every 45 minutes or so. And some of them would make the excuse of, well, I got to see if, the school nurse is calling about my son, or I'm waiting on hearing back from my spouse about something. So we've gone to that extreme, and I just didn't like what it did. We had people like in the bathroom that you knew were way more often than they typically were on their cell phone. So we've kind of gotten a little bit more lax on that and tried to give people a little bit more respect and give them the autonomy to have their cell phone on them with the caveats of some obvious things, right? Are your tasks, your daily tasks, your morning tasks, your afternoon tasks, are they being accomplished at a high level? Are you doing everything that you're supposed to do for the seat that you're sitting in before you check your phone? Now, if they don't have clarity on that, then that's a leadership issue, and we can start to unpack that. But if we're making up an example, like let's say it's your greeting coordinator, right? They need to be on track to complete all of the tasks associated with the roles and responsibilities of the greeting coordinator before they're checking their phone. That could be confirmations, that could be making sure lab cases are checked in, that could be making sure the reception room bathroom's tidy, all of those types of things. So if it were me, I would have a conversation either with the entire team if you feel it's a team related issue, or with those specific quote unquote offenders if you think there's only two or three, um, about, look, I just need you to understand that I'm not crazy about you being on your cell phones throughout the day. I realize it's kind of part of life right now, and I'm giving you a little bit of rope here, but I want to be crystal clear that if I'm observing you on your cell phone, yet the tasks that you're responsible for on an hourly, morning, afternoon, daily basis are not routinely being accomplished at a high level, then we're going to have to change our policy, and we're going to have to keep cell phones in a locker, in a purse, in your car. I respect you as a person, and I really want to give you that autonomy. Is that something that we can come to an agreement on and kind of go from there? So I think you need to set that foundation, for lack of a better term. And then once that expectation's been set, if if you're if they're struggling with it, if you're struggling with it, then you're going to have to ultimately change the policy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, yeah. And I think some people will get it and respect it and not abuse it. And you might have a couple people that truly do abuse it. And if they truly do abuse it, um, I don't know what your core values are, but I'm assuming one of them could ultimately be tied back to not following a specific core value behavior if they're constantly on their phone. And then that would be the benchmark that I'm measuring them against. And then you go into these weekly one-on-one conversations about it. And if it's continuing after a couple of weeks, and I know you and I have those conversations before, but just like anything in an office, you bring it to their attention. You decide to meet again the following week to kind of see how it's doing, and then you meet the following week to see how it's doing. And after 2 or 3 weeks, if the behavior hasn't changed, then it's time to free up their future and let them go. They just don't think that following your policy is important enough for them to stay there.
Okay. Do you handle those follow-ups yourself, or can that be delegated to a team lead or an office manager? Is that a doctor responsibility?
So super good question. It depends on the size of your team. So and I know you have a bigger team, but I'm going to answer the question in general first, and then we can talk specifically about your team. If you have a team of say 6 or 7, and you as the doctor are the team lead, and by team lead, I mean you are ultimately responsible for everyone on the team. And there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that, right? So in my world, that means monthly one-on-ones. That means continually showing them a high level of patience and kindness and humility and respect and all the things that we talk about with our servant leadership principles. It means having honest accountability conversations with them. If you have a team of 6, 7, 8 people and you're the doctor, then you are the person that's ultimately responsible for that. If you have a team of, I would guess you probably have 15, 16 people on your team. Is that true?
We're up to 20 now.
Yeah, perfect. 20. So when you have 20 people, there's a couple ways to break it up. I'm assuming you break it up where you probably have either a front desk lead and then a back
Hmm.
office lead, like a clinical lead or something along those lines. So
Yes.
if that's how your accountability chart is broken up, then the in this situation, this fictitious example I gave with the greeter being on their phone, then it should ultimately be the front desk lead. Maybe it's someone you call an office manager, maybe it's just front desk lead. Whoever's that greeter's lead should be having the conversation about expectations first and foremost, right? Setting the ground rules. Like I like to use the analogy of it's hard to keep people accountable for maintaining a certain speed limit if the speed limits are not posted, right? So you can't start yelling at someone for speeding if they were unaware that the speed limit's 40 miles an hour. So it might be time to have a recalibration conversation about, okay, guys, here is our expectation when it comes to cell phone use. And that can come from you, right? It can come from you and the front desk lead. It can come from you at a team meeting if you feel it's if a office issue, or it can come from you and the office manager in a one-on-one setting if there's only one or two culprits. After that initial, relaying of the expectations conversation, the office manager should be able to have weekly one-on-one meetings, following up with that particular person, and managing how the behavior has been going on a week-to-week basis.
Great. Okay.
Cool. And then as far as your other one, again, another tough one, right? Um, you know, if I'm understanding the question correctly, it's basically people on the clock but not doing work related things. Safe to say?
Yeah. That
Yeah.
is it. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So from my perspective, that comes back to vision. It comes back to what we call winning, right? So I've been crystal clear with the team on what winning looks like, and there's different components of winning. One of the components of winning is a certain level of profitability, and to have a certain level of profitability, as you know, you need to keep certain expenses at a certain level, and it's obvious for even someone like my 13-year-old twin boys that when you're paying somebody to not do work related things, your staff costs are going to be higher than they should, which directly affects the profitability of the practice, right? It's like business 101. But you need, in my opinion, you need to have that conversation with the one or two people, or it could be an office wide issue. Going back to the cell phone situation, if it's an office wide issue, then at a team meeting, it makes sense to get recalibrated. Guys, we had talked about this for a while. One of our goals is to get to a certain level of profitability and put a number on it, right? So one of our goals is to keep staff expenses at 28% or lower. Now, I don't know how transparent you are with the team. If you have a level of transparency with the team, it'll help. But you could say one of our goals to winning, and we've talked about this, is having staff wages be 28% or lower. and we've all agreed that this is a great goal, or it's part of a bigger goal of being a black belt office or having 20% profitability or whatever. Um, and why, then you have to go why. So why is this a goal, right? The wrong answer to that question is so I can put more money under my mattress at the end of the day, right? And that's what the staff thinks. So you have to be proactive and say, why are we doing this? And you have to come up with any number of reasons. It could be because you want to reinvest in the equipment in the practice. You want to develop a profit sharing or bonus system for the team so they get rewarded for having good months. You have sizable debt on the practice, and with what you told me offline, losing a doctor, there's more of a burden on you. No, you're working way more days than you really can physically handle, and we have to figure out ways to get to a certain level of profitability. So those are all the whys, right? And it's really easy in theory to get people to buy into that. Okay, I understand why he's trying to maintain a level of profitability, why he's trying to have staff wages be below a certain point. Okay, that's the first part. And then once you have that expectation set, you can easily then go to people in a one-on-one basis and say, hey, Mary, like we talked about this last week. It's really hurting our numbers when you're on the clock, yet you're, reading the Inquirer magazine. Is Inquirer even a magazine anymore? I'm aging myself now, so I don't even know if that's even, but you know what I'm saying, right? Like
Yeah.
it really, we're really close to hitting this goal, and every little decision that we make as an office is going to take us closer or further away from that goal. So this particular situation of you still being clocked in and scrolling on Facebook Marketplace, it's hurting us. It's taking us further away from winning. It's taking us further away from the goal that we have all agreed is really, really important to us. And then from a position of curiosity or in empathy, I'm then asking questions. I'm saying, help me understand what's going on here. Help me understand why you're doing this. Like, are you just not aware of what's going on? Were you not aware of the goal? And then you just shut up and you listen and you kind of let them like explain it. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to say something like, oh my gosh, I had no idea, or I totally forgot, or what have you. And hopefully you only need to have that conversation once with that particular person. If you have to have it multiple times, then you need to take it to another level. It could be a temporary suspension. I don't know if you have a bonus system in place. It could be suspension of the bonus system for a period of time. I never want to go there with carrot and stick stuff, but I always want to have like a couple opportunities to have an empathetic conversation with the person about it. But shame on you if after 2 or 3 of those conversations, they're still exhibiting that behavior and you're still not doing anything about it. Then it's just a typical parent child thing. Like, I'm going to see how much I can get away with.
Yeah. Hey, that's a lot to consider there for sure.
It is a lot. So let's break it down, right? So I would encourage you to start with a recalibration of what the policy is or what the system is. Okay. For both of the examples that we talked about, and you can either do that in a team meeting capacity if you feel it's a team issue. If it's not a team issue, I would strongly encourage you to do it one-on-one with the 2 or 3 individuals that are consistently exhibiting this behavior. Always tie it back to the why. This is why we have this in place, right? And then checking in on them daily or weekly, making sure that if you see the behavior being exhibited, you develop the courage, like we first talked about, because if you don't have the courage, it's really just you being selfish. Develop the courage to go to that person and be like, Mary, we talked about this. We talked about how this is really hurting us. This is preventing us from winning. Help me understand why you're continuing to do this. And then giving them the opportunity to correct the behavior. And after 2 or 3 times, if they're still struggling to correct the behavior and you can't live with it, then, it's time to let them go.
So it sounds like this approach also helps to take away the negative emotional impact it might have because it's more of a conversation instead of an accusation.
100%. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
100%. And that was And that was really well said. Because at the end of the day, you're just trying to get better, right?
Yeah,
What are we trying
yeah,
to get better? We're trying to get either the person better, we're trying to get like the business better, we're trying to get the patient experience better. We're trying, and again, in my organization, we constantly go back to this term winning, and we have winning very well defined. So it's not an ambiguous term. So it is something like gossip, for example, right? So when the team knows specifically what winning looks and feels like, I can go to Mary and I can say, Mary, it's been really clear that you've been gossiping about so and so over the last week or so. Like, help me understand how that behavior is benefiting any of us. Help me understand how that behavior is helping this office win. Because from my perspective, it's doing anything but. It's getting us further away from winning. It's causing cracks in our team. It's causing rifts in our team. And I would not be the leader I need to be if I didn't bring it to your attention and try to address it.
perfect. Okay.
All right, brother. Anything else?
Yeah. No, that sounds great. That's a lot to work on in the next little bit. So I'll do it.
No doubt, no doubt. So what I need you to do is just baby steps, right? This is an
Yeah.
800-pound elephant, and the joke is, how do you eat an 800-pound elephant? One bite at a time. So just work on it a little bit. Obviously, you have my contact information. Reach out if you need some help with uncomfortable conversations or anything like that, and then report back on how successful you've been.
Okay, will do. Thank
All
you.
right, brother. Good talking to you.
Thank you. That wraps up another episode of the Dental Lighthouse podcast. You have a choice today. Choose to be a lighthouse. Lighthouses are powerful and steadfast. They are beacons of light for others to reference when life gets turbulent. Go out into the world today and become a lighthouse for someone. Give more than you get. True joy comes from serving others. Start today. I'm Jason Tanoory, your host. Thank you for listening to the Dental Lighthouse podcast. For more information, podcast show notes, or links to anything that we have discussed today, please check out our website, thedentallighthouse.com. We would love to hear from you. If you would like to get on the show, please email us at podcast@thedentallighthouse.com.